Hello everyone, so here is a video that I just thought about making. It's actually a series. I'm going to do 3 different videos. One is going to be some gardening books that I recommend, specifically native plant gardening books, because I think that this is the type of video I wish I would have had access to when I was first getting obsessed with wildlife gardening. And if you don't know, when you are a wildlife gardener, it is highly important that you use native plants to your area. So I'm going to cover 3 different things. One, the written books that I recommend for native plant gardening. I'm going to talk about, in a separate video, about seed catalogs. And in a third video, I'm going to talk about keeping a garden journal. So these are 3 different videos, but they all involve books. So I hope you enjoy this series, and let's just get started. Hi guys. So in this video, I'm going to talk about these 4 books that I recommend for any kind of new gardener who is local to Tennessee, who's local to the Southeast United States, or who's local to the Northeast United States. But specifically, I live in East Tennessee, so if I say something is native where I live, you need to know that that's where I'm at. I am located in East Tennessee in the United States of America, and I am in Zone 7A. This will be very important when it comes to talking about native plants, when it comes to talking about wildlife that use the native plants. And if you guys don't mind, give me some feedback in the comment section on my camera, on my microphone, all these different things, because I am kind of testing out a new way of recording. So please let me know how that is. But these are the 4 books I currently read, reference, and recommend. The 3 R's. I read them, I reference them, and I recommend them. So the first one is probably going to be Butterflies of Tennessee, because the first one's going to be Butterflies of Tennessee by Rita Venable, which I don't know if I pronounce her name correctly, but I find this book to be amazing. It has lots of different butterflies in it of my area, and it tells you what plants they nectar on, and it tells you what plants that they host on as caterpillars, which is super vital if you want these particular butterflies in your garden. So it just goes into so much detail. It talks about the description. It talks about when they're young, the egg laying, the habitat, the host plants for the caterpillars, and even some gardening tips. It talks about the range that they fly, and even kind of like a calendar for when you should see them in my area of Tennessee. So, if you are in Tennessee, this is a great book for you if you are a butterfly gardener or a butterfly enthusiast or a native plant gardener. Honestly, the only sad thing is that I don't have a book like this for moths. I would really love to have a book exactly like this, but for moths, that would be really, really, really helpful. But as you can see, there's a lot of amazing content in here that can be very valuable if you want to plant the right plants to attract the right butterflies. So we kind of need something like this, but for like all wildlife, in my opinion. But that's kind of where this book comes in. This is called Bringing Nature Home. And I'm sure it's not going to cover every single thing, okay, of course. But it covers more than the butterfly book does in the fact that it talks about other insects as well, and it talks about birds. It talks about why native plants are so important if you are a bird watcher, if you are a bird or a wildlife gardener, if you care about attracting birds, if you care about birds nesting in your garden, raising young in your garden, if you care about butterflies. And then it also, again, it talks about other kinds of insects. And I think it's called entomology, right? Okay, I could be totally wrong. I'm not a scientist, but I do pretend like I'm one when I'm in the garden and I'm like exploring the garden and researching things on the internet about these native plants and this wildlife. But anyway, sometimes I kind of like to play the role of a scientist, even though I'm not at all. But anyway, so this book is interesting because it talks about why it's so important to plant native plants. It talks about the problem with invasive plants. And trust me, it's a huge problem. I'm trying to eradicate invasive plants in my yard right now. It is a huge issue. But anyway, let's kind of take a little quick glance in here, just so you get an idea of what you're gonna see in here. Yep, bugs mating. You're gonna see that. You're gonna see all kinds of cool stuff in here, guys. I highly recommend this book. It talks about cicadas, talks about walking stick bugs, talks about lacewings, and a lot of caterpillar talk, a lot of butterfly talk, but it goes into interesting detail into like these different family and genuses of trees. So it's really cool, and it talks about what wildlife needs those trees, and I think it's really superb, really helpful. I actually just finished this book today, so I highly recommend it. And when I say I finished that book today, it's because it's like, this book is a guide, okay? I don't just sit here and read this book like, well, I kind of did a little bit. But I typically wouldn't just sit and read this book front to back. It's like a field guide, like when you want to learn a specific thing about a specific butterfly or what they eat, okay? But this is more like getting you in the know about sustainable landscaping, about native plants, about having a wildlife garden, about why it's so bad to introduce invasive non-native plants into your garden, and not to shame you. It's just to explain it, because no one's explained it to anybody really, like in the education system. So it's really just an eye-opener. Alright, and the next one is another guide, sort of like a field guide situation. Haven't read this whole thing front to back, but I did start to read it front to back because this is kind of a mix between a book you would sit and read mixed with a field guide. So it's kind of both in a sense. This is Gardening with the Native Plants of Tennessee by Margie Hunter. I think I forgot to say the name of this one over here. I mean, you could see it. It's in big text, but it's Bringing Nature Home. This one over here is Bringing Nature Home by Doug Tallamy. A lot of people know about this book. But this one right here is called Gardening with the Native Plants of Tennessee, The Spirit of Place by Margie Hunter. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see that. Let me just kind of get closer so you can kind of see what this book looks like, so you can find it. Again, this is more of a field guide, so I haven't read it front to back, but I did read the beginning of it, the part that's more of a sit down and read kind of situation, and then there's a section that actually shows what the native plants look like, what kind of habitat they're good for, what they need, just basically the best places to grow, because you definitely want to put the right plant in the right place. I'm kind of a hypocrite with that sometimes. Sometimes I put the wrong plant in I put it in the wrong place, but I'm being more selective with that as I get more into gardening. So if I ever put something in, quote unquote, the wrong place, now it's usually kind of an experiment, because maybe I've been told from different resources different information. So I'm just trying to see which information is correct, because sometimes you will be told things, not necessarily in these guides, but like on a plant tag or on the internet. The plant tag might say one thing, or it might not even tell you how much sun the plant needs, or how little sun the plant needs. And then you'll look on the internet, and like one person will tell you it needs full sun or part shade, but then someone else will say shade, and you're just like, well, what do I do? Sometimes things are not consistent on the internet and on the plant tags, so just keep that in mind. In those cases, sorry if I hit my mic, in those cases, I become very experimental, and I just kind of put it where I want it and see what happens, and, if I incur a loss, I incur a loss. So let's just take a little peek inside this book. So you can kind of see, okay, right here we got Passiflora incarnata. Sorry if it's not focused. Passiflora incarnata, passion flower. So you can see, you're going to see like small images of the individual plants. And you're going to see, sorry, it's hard for me to do this with one hand. I should have used a tripod, but my tripod can't really go this low on the ground, so here we are. Talks about the names of the plants, talks about the habit of the plants, habitat, so you've got habit and habitat going on. It's just really helpful, and you will see, I think there's some charts in here, yeah, you're going to see some charts, like this is the grasses chart, and it talks about, the distinctions, it has like this little abbreviation, fruit, leaf, ground cover, evergreen, and then up here, site preference abbreviations, okay? And that's in this chart. Sorry, I'm just fixing the focus here. So this is what you're going to find in this book. And the reason that I find it so helpful is I don't have to necessarily pick up my phone and Google all of these native plants individually and find out exactly where I can put them, right? I can reference this book. But I actually mostly use this to help me discover plants I didn't know about yet that are native. Because sometimes it can kind of feel daunting when you want a native plant garden. And I mean, I'm not a native plant purist, like I said in my other video. But I'm moving toward a native plant garden. And I know that might take me my whole entire life to get there. Just because, it is a lot of work, right? But it's fine. It's fun to me. I like it. So for me, a guide like this is awesome because it's kind of daunting to try to figure out, okay, like what's even native to my area. I know the basic plants. I know about redbuds and oaks and black cherry and bee balm, but like what else we got? I know about milkweed, but like what else is out there that I don't know about, right? So that's what this book is for in my mind. It's for stuff like that. Yeah. And it's kind of like this other book. It's like a guide you just kind of reference when you need to. But this book, and the last book in this video, is called The Living Landscape, and it's written by Rick Dark and Doug Tallamy. So you notice Doug Tallamy is also in this book, or he's the author of this book as well, but he's co-authoring this one with Rick Dark, right? Doug Tallamy is going to be a person that you see in the native plant and wildlife garden space online a lot, okay? I'm just going to say, when you're trying to find information about like northeast, southeast, basically Eastern North America native plants, you're probably going to hear his name somewhere. He pops up a lot in the groups that I'm in and in the wildlife garden podcasts that I listen to, anything like that. He pops up in those a lot. So anyway, this book is kind of like taking the knowledge from this book, but you don't even really necessarily have to have the knowledge from this book to read this book, but it's just kind of bringing this generalized information and bringing it to the actual home garden so that you can actually use native plants to design a garden, okay? So what I like about it is, see, in this book, you're just learning mostly like the general, this is why we need to care, this is what birds need, this is what wildlife needs, and this is why you should care about native plants. But then this book is like, okay, you already know that. This is for people who are like, well, how do I make it happen? So what I love about this book is I can look through it and I can find charts. Hold on, let me see if I can get this to kind of prop up so it's easier to look at. All right. you're going to find charts of your area, your region. Like this is the mid-Atlantic part, right? I would go to the southeast part, which I already kind of have a little thingy over there. We're just going to throw that to the side. I would go to this part, the southeast. Okay, and I would look through here, and I would have all of these scientific names and common names for the plants and what they provide. So there's a little key. It talks about landscape functions. Okay, so you've got cover for wildlife, nest sites for birds, pollen and nectar, food for birds, food for mammals, food for caterpillars, spring flower, summer flower, fall flower, winter flower, fall foliage color, fragrance, evergreen ground cover, deciduous ground cover, screening, shade, and then it talks about edible fruit for humans. So this is so helpful, okay, if you're trying to create a native plant garden or a wildlife garden, or even just a sustainable garden plan, or even if you're just trying to turn a small part of your garden into a native garden, because you kind of like, maybe you have sections and maybe you're doing like a Japanese style garden section, but then you're doing a native plant garden section, you know, any of those, this is going to help you a lot, because you're going to be able to look, not any of those garden sections, I just mean, if you're doing any kind of native plant garden, this book's going to help you. And you want to do at least part of your garden as a native garden, if not the whole garden, because, you know, if we don't reintroduce these native plants into our gardens, we're going to see less birds, we're going to see less butterflies, and over time it's going to get worse and worse. I mean, just look at the monarch situation. Need I say more? Need I say more? So, oh, look at that. Right off the bat, a beautiful spread showing a river birch. Pretty sure it's a river birch because of that exfoliating bark. And then showing, I think we got Carolina bluebells maybe down there. And lots of other shrubs, ground covers, some trees in the distance that we can't quite see. But you see this garden vista. And look at that. Like, just as good as any other type of cultivated garden. And this is a native plant garden. Okay? Absolutely beautiful. So the great thing about this book is it does talk a little bit about stuff that the Bringing Nature Home book talks about, but you can also just kind of reference it for the design elements if you want to. Depends on what you're trying to do. So here's some talk about like why this is important, basically. And it also talks about just how we have cultivated so many spaces, like so many land, so many properties, I should say. So many properties are just full of non-native grass, non-native trees, and just things that we've introduced, which is, even though we can't see it just from looking at this picture, because, it looks like, there's a lot of trees, right? But what are the chances that all of this is native plants? Like, it's a portion of what it should be, you know what I mean? So we need more native plants is basically the point, because so much land has been taken over by agriculture and non-native grasses, like Bermuda grass. I don't know about you guys, but if you're watching this because you're also in Tennessee, how much do you hate Bermuda grass when it pops up in your garden beds? I absolutely despise Bermuda grass. It is non-native, it's invasive, and it's almost impossible to kill, dude. Like, you kind of have to crowd it out with ground cover or something. Like, it's ridiculous. But anyway, it talks about suburban landscapes. It talks about this situation where it's like, not a lot of greenery happening here. We're paving over a lot of greenery. Or we're doing something like this where it's like, this is what I call a wasteland. This is what my yard looked like when I moved into my house. Just basically, not even these shrubs. Like, my yard looked like this, basically, when I moved in here. It was a wasteland. It had, like, 3 privet shrubs, and that was it. The rest was just Bermuda grass. No judging the people who had my house before me, because they're really sweet people. And they even used to have a really nice dogwood tree, apparently, but that dogwood tree died before I got this place, so I was stuck with just non-native invasives. But, anywho, so here's another beautiful garden vista with beautiful shrubs. Look at all this color, okay? Look at all these different bright colors. Anyway, so I'm probably getting into too much detail, but you can see what I'm talking about. Like, you're going to see stuff about butterflies. You're going to see stuff about birds. You're going to see stuff about, oh yeah, I like to use these, like, paint swatches as my bookmarks sometimes. But yeah, you're going to see stuff about fall color. You're going to see stuff about fruit, plants that sustain, wildlife. There's some beautiful images of redbuds in here. I really love redbuds. There's beautiful images of redbuds in here. There's just so, I mean, wait, look at this. Now that is a full sun, almost meadow garden. It's so beautiful. Look at the butterflies having a cow, okay? There's goldenrod and ironweed in here, for sure. I'm not sure what else is in here. Maybe some Joe Pye somewhere here and there tucked in. That's a beautiful garden. So anyway, you can make a native plant. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. There's some beautiful images of birds in here too. And he talks a little bit about like what they like to eat and just like what the blooms look like on some of these trees. And here, I mean, the red bud trees are just so pretty. What's this one? Juneberry. Oh, okay. Serviceberry is really pretty too. I really want to get me some service berries. But anyway, you get the idea. So much information about designing a garden with native plants. But I almost, like, even though I love this book, it's just not enough. Like, I know that sounds a little bit, like, spoiled or not fair, and it kind of isn't fair. But I want more. Like, I want more ideas. I want to see more gardens like this, like these gardens. Rick's garden, Doug's garden, like, they're both so beautiful and amazing, but I want to see more like that. So here is the video about some native plant gardening books that I recommend, and I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. Bye!